welcome to Paramedic Pearls. In this episode, we're going to talk about when and why to call an MCI, and we're going to focus on a few assessment points that will help you get a better count of the number of patients you're dealing with. When it comes to assessing patients at the scene of an MCI, there are three tidbits I want to share with you. Now, for argument's sake, we'll use a traffic accident as our MCI. The first is, remember that you're the eyes and ears of the ER. So take a good look at the mechanism of injury, look at those vehicles carefully. If you see something that's concerning, make sure that you document it and you communicate it to the ER staff. If you don't, that information can be lost. It hampers the ER's ability to assess the patient, and that can lead to bad patient outcomes. The second is, for the most part, all people in the same vehicle suffer the same mechanism of injury. So if you have a patient that appears to have severe injuries from a motor vehicle accident, remember that everyone else in that vehicle suffered the same kinetic energy, and even if they appear minor, go back and do a reassessment. We've had lots of cases over the years of patients that appear to be minor, but they evolved over time. By the time they arrived in the ER, it was apparent that they were much more severely injured than we initially thought. And the last thing is, remember your high-risk patient populations. Think of the 3 Ds. The drunks, so patients that are intoxicated; drugs, patients that are on anticoagulants or have an extensive medical history; and the damn young and old. Now we know that young people are hard to assess because they don't necessarily interact with you very well, and we know that elderly patients are more frail and can suffer severe injuries even with relatively minor mechanisms. So use these tools to help you assess patients at the scene of the MCI. So what are the limitations on the ER? Well, remember the EMS is not the only game in town. Most ERs get about 3/4 of their patients via walk-in, and some of those are very sick. The other thing is that you may not be the only EMS call that ER is expecting. So you might be asking yourself, well, if they're that busy, why don't they just go on diversion? Well, going on diversion can be helpful, but only if the surrounding hospitals in the area are open. If those hospitals are closed, then there is no benefit at all. And the other thing is that just because an ER is busy doesn't mean that they're necessarily saturated. A lot of busy ERs can easily handle at least one critical patient at any given moment if necessary. The difference is they may not be able to handle 5. So if we don't call an MCI and we deliver 5 patients that end up being sicker than we thought to an ER, we can easily take them from busy to completely saturated instantaneously. So what are the benefits to the ER of activating an MCI? Regardless of whether the call goes to MAC or goes to the base station, the biggest benefit is a reduction of information fragmentation. What that means is, when you call an MCI, you have one paramedic calling in all patients to one MICN. If the MICN is at the hospital, they will have a working knowledge of what the hospital's capabilities are at that given moment, and if need be, they can make the decision to divert some of the patients to a neighboring hospital. Now, the alternative, which is something that we've done before, is when you have multiple squads calling in each individual patient simultaneously to several MICNs on the receiving end. Each MICN may not realize the calls that their neighboring nurse is taking, and as a result, you can end up accepting far more patients than your ER can really handle, and the ER becomes completely overwhelmed. So at the end of the day, the message we want to convey to you is, if there's any question, go ahead and activate the MCI. There can be a huge benefit to the ER, and there really is no detriment to the field.